You go to contests, you pay all this money to go to a contest. You have the entry fee, pay for your hotel, you pay for your car. And the judges sit there on the line and tell you how poorly you flew. You go to an air show and
Nobody knows.
That's right. they pay you to come. They pay for your hotel, your car. The crowd tells you how much they love you.
Most of us have been to an air show once or twice in our life and have been awed by the maneuvers performed by the amazing aerobatic pilots who put their aircraft through some incredible maneuvers.
We've always wanted to interview an aerobatic pilot, and we hit the jackpot with Vicky Benzing, who flies her Extra 300S all over the country, delighting hundreds of thousands of spectators at air shows.
She's also an air racer, holding at least one high-speed racing record, and has a beautiful Stearman aircraft while also putting together a P-51. And in addition, she has over 1,300 parachute jumps.
Talk about a card-carrying member of the adrenaline zone. But as we've learned through countless episodes, you don't get to stay in the zone very long if you don't know how to manage risk.
And Vicky is a virtuoso at that.
Many thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Culligan Water. Culligan's drinking water systems deliver the superior filtration and refreshing hydration you need to fuel your high-performance lifestyle. Learn more at culligan.com.
And we caught up with Vicky at home in California. So, Vicky, welcome to the Adrenaline Zone.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you. I really look forward to this discussion, being a pilot also, although you have quite a very interesting and broad array. And one of the first things we like to do in asking your guests is, what sparked your interest in what you do in aviation, aerobatics growing up? When did you know that you wanted to pursue this as your sort of life occupation?
I don't know exactly, but my uncle took me flying when I was a little kid. And I remember it distinctly. It must have been on a holiday because we were at my grandmother's house in Watsonville, and my uncle took us to the airport. And I sat on my dad's lap, and I was so young that I couldn't tell the difference between whether we were flying over Toyland or those are real helicopter cars. So, so that was kind of was my first exposure to aviation. And my uncle was a pilot. He flew a pit special, actually a very special pit special.
Mm.
And he flew an air show, and he was the Reno Air Racer, and so he was sort of bigger than life to me. But I never really thought that, growing up in middle class San Jose, that I could be a pilot or that I could do something like that. Until one day, one of my buddies asked me to go skydiving. He was in college, or actually in graduate school at the time. And he came down, my lab was in the dungeon. He came downstairs from the basement and asked me if I wanted to go skydiving. And I said yes, and we went out and went skydiving, and I fell in love with being up in the sky. And every moment we go out to the drop zone, make jumps, and I just wanted to be up in the air much longer than I could be under a parachute. So I had to learn to fly, and the moment I stepped into the airplane, took the control, I knew that was something that I would do for the rest of my life. So relationships may come and go, but the airplanes always stayed. Yeah.
So I think, getting a pilot's license, people can look that up. That's I don't say it's straightforward, but it's pretty well known. But then you make the next step and you go into aerobatics. So how do you train for aerobatics and get proficiency in it? And by the way, you didn't frighten your flight instructor off the bat and start doing loops and stuff, did you?
Well, it turns out he was a former military instructor. So,
okay.
I learned to fly in a 1941 tailorcraft, which is a utility category airplane, which is allowed to do loops and rolls, that sort of thing. And at the time I got my pilot's license, which is over 40 years ago, we had to do spin as part of our training. And they discontinued that then, a while back now. But back when I did it, you had to do spins, and I love the spin. So he taught me how to loop and roll the airplane. And so during my private pilot life, whenever I got a chance, I would take it out and loop and roll it. And I think I kind of got used to this whole being in unusual attitudes in three-dimensional space because when you skydive, one of the things you learn to do is is do somersaults in the air and then recover, be stable. And so I had been in the sky in all kinds of orientations. And so being upside down didn't really faze me too much. Yeah. So after I did my private,
Just make sure you're strapped in.
yes, right, in the airplane. So after I did my private pilot rating, I went out and did a 10-hour aerobatic course with Amelia Reid at Reed Hillview Airport. Um, and I bought a small airplane. I bought a small airplane like long before I bought a house. and and so I used to fly that little airplane around, and I'd do all kinds of tricks in it. And then one day, somebody who had the same airplane pulled the wings off his airplane, and I decided maybe it wouldn't be a good idea to be doing aerobatics in an airplane that wasn't specially built for aerobatics.
Mm.
And so, kind of my aerobatics took a back seat while I pursued my career in technology. And it wasn't until many years later that I took a ride with Wayne Hanley, who was a big air show pilot and a trainer to the air show pilot. And he took me up and tumbled the airplane. And I was like, oh, I got to do this. So at that point, I was in my career where I could afford an aerobatic airplane. I went out and I bought an extra, and I started training in earnest in competing in the International Aerobatic Club contest. And so that's kind of how you learn to do it. Is you get some coaching from within the airplane, and then you do contest flying. So you get critiquing from outside of the airplane. You go to these contests, you get scored on the quality of your figure, how straight your lines are, how 45 your 45s are, how round your loops are, and all that stuff. And it's a great thing about program in the International Aerobatic Club is that you start out at a higher level till you build the skills to start coming down in altitude. And so like if you start out with primary or sportsman, I start out in sportsman, you're at 1,500 feet. And then at intermediate, you're at 1,200 feet. Advanced, you're at 800 feet. And unlimited, you're at 325 feet. And at some point, I made the transition to air shows because the contest, you go to contest, you pay all this money to go to a contest, you have the entry fee, pay for your hotel, you pay for your car. The judges sit there on the line and tell you how poorly you flew. You go to an air show and
Nobody knows.
That's right. they pay you to come. They pay for your hotel, your car. The crowd tells you how much they love you. And so I think I flew my first air show when I was flying intermediate at the intermediate level in contests. And that air show was over a winery in the Salinas Valley, and they paid me to keep the wine. So I was kind of hooked on the air show. So eventually I transitioned to just doing the air show, and I retired out of the semiconductor industry to just pursue my passion in flying.
So let's roll the tape back just a little bit. I suspect when you first, started flying as a young woman, you looked around on the tarmac and you saw a bunch of guys, right?
Oh yeah.
So how cool was it to actually learn from another woman, Amelia Reid? She's legendary.
She is a legend. Yeah.
And
yeah, that was pretty cool.
Was that a kind of like, hey, I can do this kind of?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, when I finished my private pilot rating, I had 40 hours, which is kind of the minimum you need to finish a private pilot rating. And I went out to buy my own airplane, and I bought this airplane out in New Jersey, and I live in California. So I hopped on an airline and flew out there to pick it up and fly it back across the country. I had
with 40
right.
hours.
So all my training was in a tailcraft, and I bought a Luscombe. And so I went to Amelia Reid and got training from her in the Luscombe. And so when I left for that trip, I had all 50 hours. By the time I got back, I had 100 hours. But all the guys were like, "Oh, you're gonna die. You're gonna kill yourself. Going across the country by yourself, young girl." And Amelia was the one who said, "No, you could do it. Just do flight plan 3 hours at a time. Fly this 3-hour leg. Flight plan the next 3-hour leg. Just one leg at a time, and you'll be fine." And
stay out of the bad weather, and you'll be
sure
fine.
enough, I did. It was a fantastic trip. I met so many great people along the way. And that's the thing about the pilot community is that they really look out for each other. I brought my sleeping bag. I camped under the wing of my airplane, and I had, and one airport where there was weather coming in, the guy got up really early in the morning to wake me up to tell me where the weather was, because back then we didn't have the internet or the weather tools that we have now. So he he called flight service. He figured out where all the weather was. He just picked it on the map and brought it out to show me, so I knew what route to take.
Oh,
Yeah, and then other people let me sleep in the FBO or brought me to their home and fed me.
oh,
Incredible.
that
Yeah.
sounds like a wonderful trip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great to be.
Sounds like something Sandy would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we get too far into our discussion, I do want to ask you about your T-shirt, because one of the sponsors for your aerial work is California Aeronautical University. Can you tell us about them and how they support you?
So, the air shows are, you might guess, it's, it's hard to make it all work financially with the planes and flying the air show.
Mhm.
So, California Aeronautical University supports me with sponsorship. And they are a four-year university that the kids get their degrees in 3 years because they go all year round. So in the first 18 months, they get all their flight ratings through TFII, which is a certified flight instructor for instruments. And then in the second 18 months, while they're finishing out their coursework, they are instructing the younger students and they get paid for instruction. So it's a great program. They step out of the universities. They already have jobs with the airline. GAU has partnership with a number of airlines, including United Airlines, and so the kids have job offers before they ever matriculate, and they have signing bonuses, and it's an amazing time to be a pilot right now, especially a young person uh, getting into the industry. And the kids move up rather quickly from first officers to captain and then to the majors. It's pretty amazing.
While we're on the topic of education, you mentioned you paused to go to back to school, I think, and I think you got a PhD in chemistry, correct? So
I did.
I'm just curious why you went to chemistry instead of maybe aeronautical.
Hey.
Well,
I was just curious. Yeah.
I loved chemistry in high school. I was fortunate to go to a high school that had English opportunity of chemistry, and I loved I fell in love with chemistry. So actually, when I started as an undergraduate, I thought I want to be a doctor, and then I took biology in college, and I was like, no, I really like the physical sciences. I like the chemistry and the
Mhm.
physics, and so I got my BS degree in chemistry, and then I decided can't do a lot with a BS degree in chemistry. Kind of need an advanced degree, so I decided to go to grad school and went to grad school in Berkeley and got my PhD in physical chemistry, and it's during that time frame that I learned to fly. And yeah, I mean, funny story. It was really hard. I took a year of Bob Harris with quantum mechanics, which was really hard. And
Oh, I like quantum mechanics.
yeah.
My first degree's in physics,
Oh,
so
okay.
until they get the science thing.
Yeah,
But,
well, you
yeah.
probably know. I mean, graduate level quantum mechanics is pretty hard. And after, I guess during your second year, you do your oral.
Yeah.
And I had just gone through my orals when I learned to skydive. And I think it was on my first free call that I had a malfunction in my parachute and had to pull my reserve and landed, and I just was like, I felt so powerful, full of myself that I'd saved my own life. It's like, kind of made like
Yeah.
the PhD oral thing be like, you guys, you guys have nothing.
I totally get that.
Yeah. So I love math and science, and I don't know. At some point, well, I did a postdoc up in Eugene, Oregon, at the University of Oregon, and then I got hired. I thought I was going to be a professor, but I fell in love with Oregon, and I got hired by Tektronix up in Portland, so I could stay up and in Oregon, and then later, and so I worked in their integrated circuits operation in their wafer fab, and then I got
Wafer plant.
and then I got hired by a company called Lavelle Systems, made the equipment that places like Tektronix or Intel or all the others semiconductor manufacturers use to make the chip. And anyways, during that time frame, I I you know I guess I just thought I really wanted to be an astronaut. So
It was fun. I
yeah,
recommend it.
yeah. So
Didn't want to be a Navy pilot? Come on.
no, well, I was too old by then. So so I went down to Houston, did the week-long interview, and I was in the well, you know how they do the selection, right? They groups of 20. So in my year, they did 6 groups of 20. I was in the first group of 20, and I was one of 3 women, one of I think only 5 civilians and only maybe 3 PhDs, or something like
What year was that?
97.
Wow, it was the same. I was selected in the 96 class. So you
Really?
were interviewing for the class after
I was
mine.
interviewing the
Yeah.
class interview. I have a vision defect that I never knew I had. And so at the end of the week, I got told that I couldn't pass the flight school because of a vision defect.
So let me get this straight. You can do aerobatics all the way down to the surface, but you can't be an astronaut. Like how many 100 miles into space?
Oh,
Come on.
man,
Well, you know-
Vicky, I am so sorry.
Yeah, but
Oh.
think about this. Like it'd be
Yeah.
like you're manipulating the Hubble telescope in the cargo bay of the shuttle, and you like jam it into the back wall, and they're like, "Oh,
Yeah, it's not
who
good.
hired her? She has defective depth perception."
That doesn't interfere with your aerobatics flying at all.
No, because to see depth or to judge depth involves more than just how your eyes point, which is what my vision defect is. It involves how you use your head, the light and dark, size. So I specifically couldn't pass the Verhoff test, if you remember what that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, they put it up there, and I was like, which one is forward and which is back? I'm like, right? One on the right. Oh,
So, Vicky, you fly a whole bunch of different airplanes.
do.
Let's pick one, the Extra 300L, which has a 400 degree per second roll rate,
Right.
can handle 10 Gs.
Mhm.
Now, I've handled a lot of Gs, but never 10 Gs. What's it like maneuvering that airplane, and what does it take to handle those high G forces?
Well, it takes a lot of practice, mainly for the negative G's. The positive G's, not so much. You get G'd up pretty quickly. I have a single seat. I used to have a 2-seat, the L. Now I have the F. And it actually, because it has so much power, it makes up for, I fly the Stearman too. It makes up for not perfect flying. You get away with a lot because you have a lot of extra energy. You don't have to do the energy management so well, or because it rolls so well, you really don't have to use the rudder in the roll. You can just stick all the way over, and it'll roll just on like on a line, right? It the obviously the stopping on the roll is on point. It's challenging. So I did all my contest flying pretty much in the extra. And I used to train with Elena Klimovich, one of the Russian coaches. And she'd get up there, and we'd have to do like maybe on a down line, these 8-point rolls when we can stop on 8. And I would over rotate them and stuff. And she would just get so frustrated, like, stop faster. Stop faster.
Stop faster.
Stop faster.
What?
And it's the stick forces are very light, so getting the aileron centered is it's easy to over rotate, so it's easy to bobble but stop. So you flip it over, and you maybe like do this, and then you do this, and it's very obvious to the judges. So you have to learn to just take what you got and not fix it.
Just very briefly, how many negative Gs are you typically pulling in an aerobatic demonstration?
Don't really fly the extra much anymore in air shows. I think the last air show I flew in it, I did one last year, I guess, but I typically don't offer it as an air show airplane anymore. Mainly because it is a lot of G's and it takes a lot of practice to stay in G tolerance, and it's hard to do two air show airplane that requires so much training. Um, but typically I would hit 10 G's on the positive, and I would peg it on the negative, which is my G meter goes to -5. So I don't know exactly how much. Probably wasn't a whole lot more than the -5. But if you want it, if you want it to look good, you have to use a lot of G to make the corners be sharp.
The snap. Yeah.
Yeah.
Water is the ultimate health drink, and it's not just about water that's good enough. You deserve water you love.
With Pelican's filtration systems, you'll get the superior quality and pure tasting, ultra refreshing hydration you can count on to power your performance. Their smart reverse osmosis systems take it to the next level, helping you set hydration goals, track how much you're drinking, and even see what contaminants are reduced in your water, so you know you're always getting the exceptional water you need to truly feel good inside and out, ready to face the day and whatever challenges it brings.
Learn more at Culligan.com. Separate but related, what exactly is a surface level aerobatic waiver, and how do you get one?
Okay.
And when do you need one?
Well, to do demonstrations down to the surface, you have to have one. So the way the program works is you start out at 800 feet. So you can only go down to with your aerobatics down to 800 feet in front of in waivered airspace, typically in front of an audience. And you have to do so many shows at 800 feet. Then you can go down to 500 feet. You have to do so many shows, so many performances at so many different venues. And then you can go down to 250 feet. So many performances at so many different venues that you go down to the surface. And it usually takes, I don't know, depends on how many shows you can book during a year, but it might take you 3 or 4 years to get to the surface from starting out at 800 feet. And that's, of course, if you're competent, you have to pass the aerobatic competency evaluation every year. So it's kind of a self-regulated industry. The International Council of Airshows has what they call aerobatic competency evaluators. I'm an aerobatic competency evaluator. And anyway, each person who has a waiver to do aerobatics lower in waiver airspace has to do an evaluation every year in front of an aerobatic competency evaluator.
Is the international aerobatic community very large?
No, it's not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the International Aerobatic Club itself has about 4,000 members. And of those 4,000 members, I'm not sure how many are active contest pilots, but I would guess, if I were to just guess, it would be, I don't know, 300, 500.
About 10% or something.
Yeah, because even the nationals, they get less than 100 pilots usually per year to come to national. For the professional air show pilot, I don't know how many pilots have a waiver, but it's certainly under 200. I'd say between 100 and 200 pilots, which is not
small.
It is a very small community.
Yeah.
So what is your, I got 2 questions. What is your favorite aerobatic maneuver to do? And what is the most difficult aerobatic maneuver to do? And maybe they're the same for all I know.
Oh boy, I don't know. That's a good question. I've always liked loops. They're just simple figures, but they're very elegant and fun to fly because you look out, looking upside down, you see the ground. They're just a beautiful figure. I think one of the hardest figures to fly is also a very simple figure, which is a hammerhead. They're The Hammerhead, if done, if you don't do it right, can result in an inverted flat spin. So it could be a dangerous maneuver. In the German, which I fly regularly in air shows, it doesn't have a huge upline before it runs out of energy. And if I let it get too slow, the engine will torque. And you want to keep the airplane in the plane for the Hammerhead, but the engine will torque it off. And yeah, so like I think that's probably all the figures in my sequence for the German, that's maybe the most challenging one is the Hammerhead. But of course, it's the loops that can kill you at the surface, because if you misjudge them or you don't have enough energy at the bottom, enough altitude at the top, you're going to hit the ground.
That's a bad place to be.
And the reverse half Cubans do the same thing. So in my German airship sequence, I have one loop and two reverse half Cubans.
When it comes to the ground, you can only tie the record, right?
Yeah, you can only tie the record. Yeah.
So you mentioned inverted flat spins, but you have an aviation world record for inverted flat spins.
No, not me.
No,
Not me.
Okay, I thought I read that somewhere.
No, that's
okay.
I think Spencer Suderman has that record.
Yeah.
And Wayne Handley had it before him. I have a record for being the fastest woman at Reno.
Oh, that's a better record.
So your record is pretty impressive. It was what, 469 miles per hour or something
Yep.
like that. How does we're sort of switching gears, but how does that air racing sport actually work? Because not a lot of our listeners may be familiar with that. And then what kind of airplane do you race in?
Okay. Well, it's closed course air racing, of which we had the last Reno Air Races this summer, but it was the only venue in the world for closed course air racing. We raced 8 planes at a time around pylons in a 8-point-something mile course, which takes, depending on the speed of the airplane, if you're going 470 miles an hour, it's around a minute. If you're going about,
Wow.
if you're going about 300 miles an hour, it's maybe a minute 20 and 25, something like that.
It's a short but fast race.
Yeah. Yeah, with
Yeah.
with a bunch of your buddies wanting to pass you. Yeah, so the way the racing works is we all take off in order of speed. So we qualify on the course to get the speed. And then we all take off in order of speed and we join up on a pace plane. And so there'll be a pace plane and then there'll be 8 planes going out from the pace plane, and then we all come down onto the race course, about 30-degree angle, into the first pylon, which is pylon 4. And if the pace plane's set to the upright, you're making just a slight turn in, which helps to spread the field a little bit. And generally, we call this the chute. The chute is generally not a good place to pass because it's dangerous. But then we pulled around the course. We apply 6 laps, and then checker flag, and we'll come off the race course, going to cool down, and go downway and land. And so I've been racing at Reno since 2010, and I started racing in sport class, in a Glacier 3, and then later a Lancer Legacy, and I've raced every year in sport class. In 2013, I started racing jets. In 2015, I set the record as the fastest woman on the race course. And then this last year, I raced a P-51 Mustang on the race course. And I ended up in 4th place.
Are the jets all the same? Or I would think there are performance differences, or is it strictly pilot capability that wins this thing?
No, there are performance differences. So there's different jets. I mean, there's rules as to what jets can be on the race course. They can't be swept wing. They can't have an afterburner. I don't know. There's a bunch of rules. A large fraction of the jets are either L29s or L39. You know what they are
Yep, those are Russian. Yeah.
and they the best way to make them faster because this you're accelerating because you're going around in a circle. So the weight really matters, and so a lot of them take pretty much everything out of the jet to make it as light as possible, and then turn up the fuel control on the engine. They can run more RPM on the engine, and so that's kind of what how they spread out. They also re-engine some of the jets, a little bigger engine. Um,
Big money.
in a large part, it's who wins is who brought what. That especially who brought what that year, and it costs a lot of money to win to bring something that well-raced engine, especially in the unlimited. Those race engines, I think, can be $500,000. Um,
Ooh.
but then if they're close, pilot skill, of course, matters.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've raced in your P-51. What else are you? And we talked about the fact that you're refurbing it at the moment. So what else do you have planned for that airplane?
Oh, I'm planning to do air shows. So it's actually a very famous P-51. It was owned by Clay Lacy, and he campaigned it at Reno from 1964 to 1972. It's in purple livery, which is unusual for a P-51. The story behind the purple is that the airplane was purchased to race in 1964 by Al Paulson, who was the founder of Gulfstream, and he was Clay's friend. And at the time, Al had this fleet of Constellations that he was going to do an airline between Van Nuys and Hawaii, and he was going to call it Orchid Airlines. And his wife said, "Hey, can I do this Orchid Airlines? You got to paint a purple stripe on the side of the airline." So he ordered 150 gallons of purple paint, and it was custom orchid purple paint. And they received 1,500 gallons of purple paint. And so the toolboxes and the ladders and the Mustang all got painted purple. But it became a very iconic airplane. So it was really well known among the race fans, and also Clay brought it to a lot of air shows. So it became really popular in the with with young people at the time. When I got it, when it went, I bought it in 2019, and I flew it for about 25 hours. I took to Reno in 2019 just to put it on stag display. And then after Reno, I took it down to Fighter Rebuilders to be restored, and we repainted it in the purple livery. And I brought it to Reno this year, and the response from the fans was just overwhelming. Overwhelming.
Nice.
People brought pictures of themselves standing by that airplane when they were little kids, standing under the wing.
Oh my
It
gosh.
has it has its own fan club. It has such a following that I just hope that putting it on the air show circuit in the future will inspire the next generation the same way that it did for this generation of people and pilots. Yeah. So it's
That's a
pretty
great
cool.
story.
Yes, the one lady went out to her orchard and brought us I named the plane Plum Crazy. And so she went out to her orchard and picked a bushel of plums. He brought them in for us at the races.
Don't eat too many of those.
Yeah,
So you and your steerman are movie stars and TV stars.
we are.
What exactly did that involve? Yeah. Tell us about that.
So, well, the Stearman, I've done a couple projects with Stearman. I did the Mercury 13, the Netflix film, the one about the would-be astronauts. I guess the gals that went through the whole flight vehicle program back in the days of the uh, Mercury program. And through that, I got to meet Wally Funk, which is pretty cool because she flew with German. And so I was basically the stunt double for Wally in that movie. And that film led to doing a number of other projects uh, that, not, that use both this German and also we have a King Air. So the aerial coordinator that was on Mercury 13 has brought me out for a couple other things. I think we were on NPIF LA. This last spring, took the German the Kinger out to Texas to do an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger, which was kind of funny because it was at this private airfield and the runway was literally like 2 feet wider than the Kinger landing gear with on each
Yikes.
side, and it was wet, so I couldn't get off of the pavement, and there was no place. And they wanted me to go up and down the runway, and there was no place really to turn around, and the taxiways were very narrow, and I'd have to have somebody guide me on the taxiway, so I kept the wheels in the right spot to clear the trees on the end. So I figured out that Kinger's got reverse. So
Yeah, yeah. Back
get
it
to the
up.
end of
You
the
need to-
runway, turn,
Yeah.
reverse, turn.
3-point turn in an airplane.
Yeah,
You need to get the purple P-51 into a movie somewhere. That would be
that
good.
airplane's been in the movie. Well, it was on an episode of Magnum PI.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Of course.
and back in the day. Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to something you said earlier. You talk about parachute jumps. I actually did one just to, if we ever had to eject out of a T-38 to figure out what that would be like. But you've got over 1,300 parachute jumps. Do you still do that? Because that clearly is a huge interest of yours. Or did you perform there too? Or
Yeah, it's always been an interest. For a while, I was kind of keeping pace with the number of flight hours I had, with the number of jumps, but then the flight hours kind of took off. But no, I jumped through the years. I haven't jumped since the pandemic, and I put a little weight on, so I had bought a new parachute with the idea that I'm going to jump. But I've been busy with air shows, so now I have a new parachute. I'm going to go jumping this fall. I really do miss it.
it was quite the sense of freedom. Actually, I totally get why you liked it.
Yeah, I loved it. Ultimately, I got really busy with my career, and something had to give. So I kept flying, but the number of jumps I made per year wasn't large. But yeah, I still love jumping, and I really love jumping. Yeah.
You have overcome any obstacles that might have been related to the fact that you're a woman pilot. You crashed through those. But what were some of those challenges, particularly when you were younger? We talked about that a little bit earlier, but did you feel there were a lot of barriers you really had to overcome, or just get in your airplane and do it better than anybody else?
It seems to me that the guys like having women around. I mean, how boring it is to just all be a bunch of guys, right? So uh, I didn't really feel like I was unwanted. There weren't very many women. Like on the radio, you hardly ever heard a woman's voice when I first started flying. But there's more and more now, which is wonderful. I don't know if I could say that there were any barriers. I mean, there's sometimes, like in the racing, the guys like to race with you. They just don't want to be beat by you because then they get beat by the girl, right? So I didn't.
Yeah, you got to get over that.
Yeah, I never really thought of myself as not one of the guys until one day it came out that one of the guys was teasing the other guy because I he kept losing to me, and then I subsequently that guy. So that was kind of good.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, good for you.
but it kind of hurt my feelings because I guess I just never really thought about myself as being not one of the guys, and but I don't know that there were obstacles that I had to overcome in that respect. I will say that career-wise, when I was young, I thought that you had to decide between having a family and having a career. Getting a PhD and having a career in industry, I just really didn't see that I could do both. There weren't any examples of people doing well. And nowadays you see examples of that. You see like Marissa Mayer, who's out in CEO of Yahoo, has a family, and influence, all that stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I wish I had had role models when I was younger of women who did it all. Because I did miss out on a part of life that maybe I could have had. But then again, maybe I wouldn't have done so many things in my lifetime had I had a family. So
along that line, what advice would you give young girls who are interested in becoming pilots and doing some of the things that you've
that
done?
you can have it all. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You don't have to make those choices, that you can have it all. And I think, you know, companies and airlines and military, all those organizations have really come to realize that women need to have the time to have a family life and be able to participate in a career. And gosh, if they don't, those organizations are missing out on like half of humanity. We make up 50% of their potential market, right?
In the military, this was not only the right thing for us to do, we had to do it because it vastly increased our recruiting pool, both on the officer and the enlisted side. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you'd like to think it was all virtuous, but it was partly necessity. So, anyway.
Absolutely.
So Vic, where do you see the future of aerobatic flight going in the next 5 or 10 years? Are there any changes coming down the line? Anything new that's out there that's going to delight audiences at air shows that we haven't seen before?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question. You know, I think the air shows are really wonderful, and it's great to see more and more women participating in the air shows. And the military is a big component of that. So we're seeing more and more women as demo pilots at the air show.
We have our first female Blue Angel slot
Right.
or
Right.
solo pilot. Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah, we have Bayo, Major Kristen Bayo Wolf is the F-35 demo pilot. Rebel Wilson is the F-16 demo pilot. They're both women, and they just tear up the sky. And I think it's such a great role model for the young women out there. So I think, you know, it's exciting to see that come about. And I think that's a huge contribution to young women in general. So I hope to see more participation and more diverse pilot group too. So I think that would also be a big thing for the air show to embrace. As far as aircraft, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I mean, there's always new aerobatic aircraft that come out.
Well, Vicky, this has been a fantastic conversation. I've really been looking forward to this, to be honest with you. We had to wait till the Reno Air Races were over and everybody came off their cruises and did all that. And but it's really cool to talk to somebody who gets to have so much fun every day.
Yeah. Well, you kind of have to make that for yourself, right?
Well, be safe out there and enjoy your new P-51 when it comes back all decked out in its purple livery.
Thank you.
And we'll be looking for you on the air show circuit.
Yep, I'll be out there.
All right.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Okay,
Vicky.
thank you guys.
That was aerobatic pilot, air racer, and all-around amazing pilot, Vicky Benzing. I'm Sandra Magnus.
And I'm Sandy Winnefeld. Thanks again to Culligan Water for sponsoring this episode. Your life is about taking risks. Your water shouldn't be. Learn more at culligan.com.
Please pass our podcast around to your friends, and we'll see you next week with another fun and interesting episode of The Adrenaline Zone.